Hey, this is Dave with Taboo Customs. Today in this video we are going to be working on this 2001 TJ here behind me with the water pump on it. Started weeping, so we're going to get into it. We're going to replace the water pump, and while we're at it, since we're there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull the thermostat and also replace the thermostat. So let's get started. All right, so first step, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove the overflow bottle here. Pretty simple. You may have a spring clamp up here. This one actually has a screw style clamp, just using a flat screwdriver. We'll loosen that, pull that off. Then to remove this bottle, you're going to need to take your screwdriver, slide it behind. There'll be a little nub on the back of the bottle here. You just want to get enough space so you can get that nub out, and then pull it straight up and it'll pop right out. So our next step is, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to get the fan off here. If you've still got a clutch style fan, there's a big huge nut down here, and if you look, this is the new water pump. You're going to see this boss here is threaded. That's what that nut is threading onto. So we are going to have a big screwdriver and a crescent wrench. We're going to use the bolts that hold the pulley on as some leverage. Try to get down there. Break that nut loose. And then unthread it. Now you're gonna be careful. Want to be careful as you get to the end. You don't want it to hit the radiator. But what we want is this fan out of the way, so we can go ahead and pull this shroud out of the way. You won't necessarily need to pull this shroud off if you're doing this, but for us, showing it on video, it's going to be easier. All right, if you are going to pull this shroud off, it's going to be 4 bolts, 2 on each side. This Jeep 7/16 socket works well. We're just using an air ratchet, makes it easy. All right, so now we're to the point to where we're going to go ahead and we're actually going to drain the radiator, drain a lot of the fluid out of it. Since we're replacing the water pump, pretty much going to want to get all that old fluid out anyway. So the easiest way to do that is down here on the passenger side of the radiator. There's going to be a valve. It's going to stick out. It's going to have like a flat end here on it, just like a bolt. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. You loosen that up, and you're going to drain the radiator. So for us, we're going to go ahead and pretty much drain it out, and then we will get started on disassembling everything. Now you could, obviously, if you're just here for the thermostat housing, won't need to drain a whole lot of it out. Thermostat's pretty high on the engine. But if you're going to do the water pump, like I said, you probably want to drain the whole thing. Now the next step, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull the belt off. So we have a 1/2-inch drive breaker bar here. Down here in the tensioner, there's going to be a 1/2-inch square hole that we're going to put that in. Now if you are looking for the belt routing diagram, right there's the belt routing diagram if your Jeep doesn't have one. So let's get the belt off. All right, so now we're going to jump into the thermostat housing here mainly. We're going to pull off the coolant sensor connector. On the back side towards the head, there will be a button to push, and then just pull that up and off. Get that out of the way. Now we've got to pull the heater line and the upper radiator hose. So we've got a pair of spring clamp pliers because these have spring clamps on them. You may have just your standard screw type clamp on there. So we'll just pull those off. All right, so on these, you're probably going to want a pair of channel locks or something else to kind of grab this hose. I recommend kind of grabbing it and twisting it, break the seal on it, then it'll be a lot easier to pull off. You can kind of grab it. All right, so now there will be two bolts holding the thermostat housing on. One here kind of in the middle, one down below it. The top bolt is a really long bolt heading into the head. 1/2-inch socket. You should be able to just take them out pretty easy. This Jeep is pretty filthy though. All right, so if you're just here for the thermostat, we'll talk about that a little bit before we move on. Of course, thermostat goes with the spring inside the engine block. I don't even know, I think it'll fit the other way. Yeah, it won't even fit the other way. You're definitely going to want to go and make sure you clean off the old gasket with a scraper or a razor blade or something. Make sure you get all the gasket off of there, clean it up pretty good. Also clean up the block pretty good. This one is pretty nasty, so we're gonna have to go do quite a bit of cleaning on it. Try to make sure you don't get anything down in the block. Obviously you're gonna flush it into your radiator, and you don't want that because you don't want to plug your radiator up any more than it's going to be. And then you can reinstall your thermostat first. Put the gasket here on the thermostat housing, and then go ahead and bolt it back up. Now I believe the factory torque on these is 13 foot-pounds for those two bolts if you were concerned about the torque on those. So you basically torque it back up, hook everything back up, and hopefully you're good to go. All right, so now we'll get started on the water pump itself. First thing I'm gonna do is pull this pulley off. Pretty sure we can't get to all the bolts without the pulley off of there, so we'll get that off first. Now to do that, we've got a 1/2-inch socket, and we've got a big screwdriver because we're going to need some leverage as we try to get these undone. And you're going to want to be a little bit careful with this because it's pretty easy to bust a knuckle doing this, because that's why we grab the larger ratchet. Then we'll pull that pulley off, get started on the other hoses. All right, so the next steps is we're gonna remove the other two hoses. We've got the other heater hose that runs back to the firewall, and then we've got where the lower heater hose comes up to the water pump. Again, for us, these are spring clamps, so not too difficult. Although I find that these hoses are taken off less, it seems, so they're a little bit tougher sometimes. All right, so now that we have everything disconnected from the water pump, we'll go ahead and there are 5 bolts holding this on. The first 3 are easy to see up here, 2 on top, 1 on the left. There's one like almost straight below this one on the right, and then there's one like on the bottom at about the 6 to 7 o'clock range there. That one can often be covered in gunk, so a little bit hard to find. 1/2-inch socket. Basically just pull all of them out, and then we should be able to remove the water pump. Alright, so as far as the bolts, pretty much only that one bolt is a weird length, the one there on top. So the rest of them you don't have to worry too much about keeping them sorted. Just break it loose. Probably going to spill a bunch of coolant out that's been stuck in the engine. And, oof. Oh, wow. That's interesting. Suppose that water pump doesn't work anymore. There's the rest of it. We've gone in and we've pulled out what we could from the block there. And I mean, we can roughly recreate this, but I'm seeing where there is quite a bit of plastic still missing. Like that whole section right in there is still missing, and we can't find it anywhere down in the block. Because of the way this failed, we don't want it flushing through there if we can help it. I'm actually going to push this outside. We're going to take a garden hose. We'll put a garden hose here and try to run water backwards, see if we can dislodge it, force it back out this way, maybe run it back and forth. Who knows, it might already be in the radiator, but we didn't see it floating around here on top. So yeah, we're going to try to get it back out if we can. That's the problem with these. If you can get it out, you want to get it out, but might be a chance we just never see that piece again. But so is what it is, unfortunately, at that point. All right, so we'll be right back. All right, so y'all saw us flush out the radiator. Honestly, I didn't really, don't know that we got a whole lot out of there, but now the warranty folks can't say that we didn't flush the engine out. Anyway, the next step on the water pump here is we need to remove this tube here. So this is a tube for the heater hose. 19 millimeter fits on there, at least on this one, really snugly, which is good because you want it on there really snug. I'm afraid it's even with that, it's going to want to round off, but we will hopefully see if we can get it off. Oh, I should have mentioned this before we started. So you're going to want to really look at how this hose is aligned. If you look at the mating surface of your water pump, this tube is 90 degrees to that. So when we go to put it back together, you're going to want to get it back to 90 degrees to that mating surface. Okay, so this, you will need to put some sort of sealing on these threads here. So we just got some thread tape there. Now putting this back together, you have to be a little bit more careful in taking it apart. You can't clamp it the way I had it because you don't want to clamp on this surface here, which is the mounting surface, because you don't want it to leak. But you do have this piece right here that you can put in the vise. And if you look at it, you'll be able to see that it's not a machined surface, it's a cast surface. You can clamp on that, play all you want. So we're going to clamp down on that and hopefully have enough clearance to install this. All right, so we actually test fit the water pump without the gasket just to make sure our hose, this tube here, is pointing the right way. Then what we did is we did use a little bit of RTV smeared on the water pump to hold the gasket in place, because you don't want that to go somewhere while you're trying to put it on and then cause you to have a leak, which you'll find at the end, and you'd have to redo everything. Don't want to do that. We're gonna get it lined up. We're gonna go ahead and put the top bolt in it first. All right, so as we go around, we tighten these. We're not gonna just crank on one. We're kind of gonna get them all snug, and we'll start with the 2 bolts in the center, and then once they get snug, we'll tighten them a little by little, kind of all together. Which should be about 22 foot-pounds, 22 and a half foot-pounds. Not sure why 23 is too much, but I guess we'll go ahead and we'll throw a torque wrench on it. See where we're at. don't know if I mentioned it on the water pump, but really make sure you have your mounting surface here clean. So we go in and we scrape ours with a razor, and we actually cleaned the engine outside when we did that flush. Try to get as much off of there as we can. Make sure it's as clean as possible. Same thing if you're reusing anything. Make sure you go in, clean up the mating surface as much as possible. So we'll put our thermostat back in, spring side towards the block. Should pretty well stay in there just fine. Then we'll go ahead and we'll put our bolts through the thermostat housing. Use that to keep the gasket in place. Since you can see this gasket, it's a little bit easier. All right, as mentioned earlier, the torque on these is I believe 13 foot-pounds. So get our hoses back on, get our connector connected again. Go ahead and put our fan back on, which is pretty easy. Again, you'll just have to hold the bolts here. And now pretty much do it for this thermostat and water pump replacement. Thanks for watching, and you can check out taboocustoms.com for rust repair kits, Jeep repair, Jeep skid plates, a lot of different things we carry on there, so be sure to check that out. Again, thanks for watching, and as always, a like or subscribe. It's greatly appreciated.